Yeah, it was. I was never business oriented. I've done so many different things. A lot of blue collar work when I was growing up, and then I worked for the Senator John Glenn from Ohio, who was an astronaut and a famous American for a year. And made documentary films. I've done just about everything you can do. You think
And you were
sometimes.
a photographer too, right?
Well, I made a documentary film, but I was an actor for a while in L.A., and I was a starving artist in L.A. Living on an old leaky boat and trying to make a living as a writer, and and so I've lived a little bit of everywhere and around the world a good bit. But I was in Afghanistan in '09 covering the war over there, and doing some other government work that we'll talk about it later, and and almost got blown up 3 times in 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And I had just turned 60, and I said, I don't need this anymore. I'm going home. So I came home. I didn't have a clue about what I really wanted to do. I knew I had some books, 2 other books I needed to write that I already started. And then I was over in Rome, Georgia, and having lunch with a friend of mine who owned a Subway. And across the street from the Subway was a little restaurant that was for sale. And I have a little airplane, and I had flown over there. It's only a short flight, 10-minute flight from my town to Rome,
Mhm.
Calhoun to Rome. So I went over there, and I was sitting having lunch with him. He said, "What are you going to do now?" And I said, "Well, I got a couple of more books I want to write, but," I said, "I'm not sure. The last bomb that went off is still resonating in my ears, and so I got to wait till my mind clears." And he said, "Well, you forget about that because your mind ain't never going to get clearer." So, because he knew me, and then he said, "I think that restaurant's for sale over there across the street." And I said, "Well, man, I don't know anything about the restaurant business." And he said, "That's never stopped you from doing anything before." And I said, "I know," and so I didn't think anything about it. And then I walked across the street and stood on the deck of the thing, and I had a buddy of mine who had been in the restaurant before, and I'd helped him a little bit in it. And I stood on the deck, and I literally said, "We got this restaurant here. I could fly back and forth to work."
Mhm.
That's not the way you just go into a business simply because it's your mode of transportation is what making you come to
Yeah,
the
that's a
restaurant.
crazy thought. Let me fly out every day to the work.
Yeah. So anyway, we ended up buying the thing, and then it was the last franchise of a place called Schroeder's Deli that had been downtown Rome for 30 years, and then they had a franchise operation going on that they didn't have any control over, and it lasted a few years. And this was the last one of the franchise, and so we bought the business, but we didn't have to buy the franchise. The Schroeders, everybody knows who the Schroeders are, and I knew them some. And they said, just pay us a percentage of, whatever you sell, and you can sell anything else you want. So it was a deli that I turned into a burger joint
Mhm.
because the first term I spent in college, I spent in the library researching how herbs and spices affect the palate.
Mhm.
And because I'd cooked next to my mom all my life, so I'd always liked to cook. And so I came up with an herb spice concoction that turned all the hamburgers I cooked at my fraternity house into a rage all over campus. And that ended up being the hamburger that won the best burger in Rome 4 years in a row.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's not because of anything else, it's not because of the toppings, it's because of what you do to the meat, because it all starts there. So anyway, that's what started my restaurant career, and then I bought my partner out, in 2012, I think, and then at when I was 65, I did 3 things you're not supposed to do. I got married for the first time, I ran with the bulls in Pamplona, and I borrowed $1,000,000 to build a restaurant.